Hi YouTube, this is Amy, Papa Chick Creative, and today I am doing an ocean background in my art journal. Just going to adjust the lighting here a little bit so you can see the page a little better because I'm shooting this at night. So as you can see, I have a new page opened up in my art journal. This has been gessoed, and I just used Art Advantage gesso from Michaels. Very simple. I really enjoy working with that gesso. And now I am just going to heat the page and dry the gesso. Okay, so next I'm going to apply some of the Derwent Inktense blocks to make a background. And since this is an ocean background, I'm going to use blue and green. And the great thing with Inktense is that they are water soluble, so you can just start to sketch on your page, you can scribble, you don't have to be neat or follow any kind of lines, you just put color wherever you'd like. Okay, now I'm going to take a brighter green color and go over that. And then there's actually one more color in here that is a blue-green combination. So I'm going to do a little of that in there. And I think these colors will all blend in really nicely together. Okay, and I just have a water bottle filled with water. I'm just going to generously splat that all over the page. I'm going to take a large paintbrush and start to blend those colors in. And since the page is still wet, I'm going to use another water-soluble product. These are the Faber-Castell gelatos. And I'm going to get a little more color on the page. These are a different medium than the Inktense blocks. The blocks are more of a chalk with lots of pigment. And the gelatos are just like they sound, they're more jelly-like. And these two colors are from the metallic gelato set. The green is metallic mint, and the blue is metallic blueberry. Okay, so now we have a little bit more intense color. And I'm just going to go in with my heat gun again and dry this page. Okay, so now I'm going to add another layer to this dried page. You can see the gelatos and the Inktense made a nice blue-green background. And I found this placemat at Home Goods, and it's almost too pretty to use, but I'm going to use it as a stencil. I'm just going to line it up to the mat, and I'm going to mix up some paint off here to the right. I have two different colors and a pearlizing medium, and the pearlizing medium is by Americana. Okay, so first I have an enamel green, if it'll come out of the bottle, and that's by Folk Art. It's the Plaid brand, and let me see if it has a name. Hunter Green. That's Hunter Green. This is Craft Smart from Michaels, and that's turquoise. Two of my favorite colors to work with, green and blue. I'm going to give a nice amount of turquoise off to the side here. And then I'm going to add the pearlizing medium. This is going to give it a nice shimmery effect. Okay. And then I have one of these little tulip foam pouncers that are perfect for stencils, especially for little intricate ones. And I have more than enough paint here to work with. And I'm just going to start dabbing in the paint. So these little pouncers hold a lot of ink, so they're great to soak up color and then just pop it onto your project. And I'm noticing as I'm pouncing that the entire table is shaking, so I hope the shakiness isn't coming out too much on film, since the tripod is set up on the table. Hopefully it's not bumping around too much. And I want to create this background because there is going to be some sea life. I'm going to use some of that paint that's already on the stencil so it doesn't go to waste. Just kind of brush it off of the stencil and onto the page. Never waste product if you can help it. That's my motto. Sorry, I can tell that the camera is bumping up and down as I'm pouncing here. Hopefully it's not making you seasick. Haha, pun intended, huh? Okay. Brush off some of the paint off the plastic. And the best thing to do when you're working with acrylics and gesso is to wash off your tools as quickly as you can, because otherwise it will stick like crazy and it'll be a lot harder to get that off of your tools later. So as soon as I'm done stenciling in the kelp in the background, I'm going to go and wash the stencil and the foam pouncer because I don't want the paint to dry on there. Okay, and I'm just looking for any areas I might have missed. Just going over with one final pass to get up any wet paint that might still be on the back of the stencil that I can still use. And I am leaving about the top, fourth of the page with just the gelato and Inktense background instead of stenciling all the way up. Okay, I'm going to go pulling this up, and I'll be right back. Okay, so here we are, and this is the stenciled background. I really like how it turned out. It was very unexpected. Try to show you some of the detail. So it doesn't look perfect, and I like that, because mixed media is not about perfection, and especially not in your art journal. So what I'm going to do, acrylic dries pretty fast, but it is still wet in some areas where the paint is heavier, so I'm just going to go in with my heat gun. Okay, so now I'm back and I have a dried journal page here, and you might notice a lighting difference. It is daytime now here, and hopefully you'll be able to see what I'm doing a little better. So what I'm going to do is do some layering now using some homemade stamps. This was originally made as a mask, but I'm going to use it as a stamp today. And as you can see, it's a leafy pattern that I think will work well as more sea life, more kelp. And because I want that dimensional effect on the page, I'm going to use a lighter color. So as you can see, I just laid down a little pool here. This is the plaid color Key West. It's a light turquoise. And I'm going to go in with another one of my tulip foam pouncers and try to stay in frame here. I'm just going to go ahead and ink up the foam. And because acrylic paints dry pretty fast, I want to move fast. And this is going to be sort of blotchy, which is fine, because once again, it's mixed media. It doesn't have to be perfect. Part of the reason why mixed media works for me, because I am not Martha Stewart, and I never will be. I like imperfection. I like things to look a little bit off-kilter. And okay, so I'm going to do a little bit of a darker tone so that you can see this better. So I'm going to go back in with this darker turquoise that I used earlier. And go back over and again, I'm just getting paint onto the stamp. I'm not too worried about having perfect lines or anything like that. I just want it to give the visual effect of layering. And so I'm going to lay this one down, press that in, and these are pretty easy to make. If you have an X-Acto knife or some other type of blade, you can just draw or trace a pattern onto foam, like I've done here, and then you just cut it out. That's how I made this leafy pattern. And then if there's any excess paint on there, I'm just going to lay it over here. Okay. So we have some nice little two-tone effects going on there with different types of sea life, and you might recognize this textured foam heart that I got at Michael's. I've used these quite a bit actually because they have lots of different textures, and this time I'm going with the wave texture to go along with the ocean theme. I'm going to add a little bit more of the enamel green, the hunter green, and a little more of the lighter turquoise color, the Key West color, and just sort of blend this in. And while I'm blending, this paint is drying pretty fast, and I'm going to leave some paint off to the side here. And you can always add a spritz or two of water to the acrylic paint to reactivate it in case it's drying on you a little bit too fast. So I'm going to go ahead and ink up this guy. And because I don't want to have it be a heart shape necessarily in the ocean, I'm just going to ink parts of the pattern. You can see there's lots of nice gesso on there that will probably never come off of this little rubber piece. Okay, let's go right there. And because I'm going to have a mermaid in this scene, I don't want to get too busy on the top of the page, but I do want to have some effects that go behind her, and so it again gives that dimensional effect. There's a little more of the waves, and I'm just going to ink this or paint this up one more time. And go up here and just lightly press so that we get the wave effect up here. I don't know if that's in frame. Now you get to see part of the cigar box that my tripod is sitting on. Okay, so just the effect there of waves. And I like how they're overlapping and definitely giving the look of the ocean. So here's where we're at so far. Just going to show you some of the dimension on the page there. Okay, so for this part, what I'm going to do is use another homemade stamp, and this one actually is mounted. The stamp itself was made in a very similar way to this. I just used some foam and traced this pattern of the mermaids onto the foam, cut it out, and then mounted it onto some cardboard. And this is a pretty sturdy stamp, even though it's homemade and recycled. And I want the mermaids to be swimming kind of up towards the top of the page, and I'm using a combination of Folk Art Metallic Silver Paint and Craft Smart Black. So I'm just going to blend that off to the side here. Doesn't really matter if it picks up a little bit of that turquoise paint that's already on the craft sheet. And quickly going to paint it. One way that you can extend your paint is to use a flow medium or some type of acrylic gel you can add that to your paint and it'll keep it wet a little longer so you have a little bit more working time. I haven't done that here though. I'm just going for it for the sake of time. Okay, so there is a little bit of color variation on the stamp, and it is ready to pop onto the page. I'm going to give it a nice firm press onto the page. I want to get all the detail. The nice thing about this stamp though is that it's not super detailed. I mean, it's mostly just big shapes, and so there's not too much of the pattern that will not show up. Okay, so around the edges here I'm just going to pop a little bit of this paint and get this sort of shadowy effect of where the mermaids are. Because to get this looking a little bit more realistic and so that it really is obvious that they're mermaids, I'm going to be going back over the stamped image. But I just wanted to show how the stamp turned out. And as you can see, there's little areas that I didn't get. So I'm just going to take my paintbrush, just a plain old paintbrush that's on the smaller side, and paint in that mermaid. And make sure to get her arm. I'm just using a light touch so that I'm less likely to make mistakes. And I want to get this other mermaid's tail more defined. So another option I could have done here is to make a bigger stamp, one that would spread all the way across this 9-inch paper. Because the stamp is smaller though than the paper, like I said, I'm going to be adding some things around here so that it just looks like the mermaids are swimming in between the kelp and sea life and the waves. And that way it doesn't look like they're just cut off. Just going to go back over the tail a little bit, because that's the essential part of a mermaid is her tail. Otherwise she wouldn't be a mermaid, right? And once that dries up, I may even go in with an alcohol marker or something like that to define the shapes of the mermaids a little better. Okay, so for this part, I'm going to go back to my kelp stamp, and I've mixed, or am mixing, some of the Key West light turquoise with the silver, and this is going to be what borders or frames the mermaids. So I want it to be a slightly different color than anything else I've put on the page yet, because I want it to definitely stand out. is coming up to be kind of a pale blue-gray. And I'm just going to lay that over here. I'm going to put a little more push into this side because this is where the mermaids aren't. And then it can sort of lightly have an effect over where the mermaids are stamped. And then I'm going to use a little bit of the remaining ink to go a little bit lower and get another little bit of paint there. And it's really easy to work with these acrylic paints in terms of drying time. I mean, you can put a project together so fast because they dry quickly on their own, and even if they're not going quite fast enough, you can use a heat gun or a hair dryer. Okay, so for this last little bit, I'm just going to put more of the darker turquoise down with the hunter green acrylic, and I'm going to use this wave pattern again. And I like that the paint isn't all one color and that it's going to have a little bit of a marbled effect. I think that just adds to the interest of the page. And I don't want to lose that mermaid's tail, so I'm just going to lightly stamp that right there. And over here, still have some paint on there. Okay, and see if I can get one more down here. Just swirling up some more paint off to the side here. Here and down here. There we go. I have a little bit of this Reeves acrylic left in this tube. I'm just going to place a little of that down. Hopefully I'm still in frame. And mix that in. And again, inking. This time I'm going to be really random about where I'm inking onto the rubber. Okay. I want the, as you're getting closer to the surface of the ocean and where the sun would be, I'd like that to have more of the natural effect of light, so that's why I'm going in with a little bit lighter color for the waves. This is why we call this a process video, right? It's a process. You get to see all the little experiments. I won't call them mistakes, but things that, you know, that come up during a project. So I'm just going to break into this whitewash acrylic. It's just Americana. And I'd like to get a little lighter again, but just with a hint of the oceany greenish turquoise color. And the more I stamp this wave pattern, the more layered it looks, and I just think it has a really cool effect, the way it's coming up there. Off to the side. A little more white. Okay, and so, okay, dogs are having a fit right now. Sorry about the noise. I'm going to try to not film the parts where they're barking like crazy. Chelsea, Chelsea, shh, hush. Okay, so now I'm going to use the kelp as a mask. And I'm going to go in with a completely different color. This is a cranberry color that I made just with the Tim Holtz Adirondack inks. And I'm holding it a good 6 to 8 inches from the page. And if you study the color wheel, that will really help you in terms of picking out colors that will go well together. So the greenish blue goes nicely against a cranberry color. I could have also gone with a gold tone. And this is just to add another medium. And the alcohol ink will dry pretty fast. And I'll just tell you that with alcohol inks and spraying, they don't recommend heating the alcohol ink. There's some kind of flammability, so if you have a different kind of mist that does not contain alcohol, I would recommend that. I mean, I'm just doing this at home because I've done it before and I haven't had any problems with setting anything on fire, but I don't want to cause any accidents out there, so just please be careful. Turn off my phone so you guys don't need to keep hearing the ring. Okay, so now we have some little pockets in here that have some light showing through. And if you've ever scuba dived or gone snorkeling or anything like that, you know that these little pockets show up in nature. So I think that gives it a nice look. It looks realistic, and yet it still has that mixed media look of sort of messy and abstract. So what I'm doing now is I'm using the Light Body Metallic Lumiere by Jacquard. This is the Sunset Gold, and I'm just going to go in with my finger, just dab it on. And I just kind of want to give some little gold elements in here. And I just want that kelp in the background to pop a little bit around the waves. And I'm being careful not to darken that area where the light's showing through. Do some gold up here. And like I mentioned before, if you are not sure what colors are going to go together, it's great to have a color wheel. If you pull one up on Google and just bookmark it or print one out, that's a great way to know what colors are going to not clash. So knowing that this burgundy cranberry-ish color would go well with the blues and greens and a gold tone is good to know going in, because then you kind of know which colors to pick out and there's less guesswork in it for you. Okay, so what I'm going to do is let this page completely dry, and I'm going to come back in with some pens and define the mermaids as well as some of the kelp. So I will be right back to show you that. Okay, so now that the page is dry, I'm just going to come in with a couple of Permapaque markers by Sakura. First one is black. So I'm just going to define this mermaid's body a little better. And because her body sort of disappears behind here, I just want to go in and faintly create a tail. And really give it the illusion of them swimming amongst the waves and behind the sea kelp. There's a little bit of her head right there. And then I'm going to use this green metallic, which got some paint on it. Messy, messy mixed media. And sort of lightly draw in her tail here so that it looks like it just sort of blends in with the waves, but you can still definitely make out the tail. Now go in with a little bit of the black. And I'm going to use just a little bit more of the Lumiere light-bodied acrylic and just sort of dab and go in with a little bit of black into some of these spaces so that the tails are more defined. I'm just going to pull some of that color through. Just going to wet my paintbrush a little bit more so I can pull a little bit more of that color through. That way there's less of those hard lines. It looks a little more watery, like it would if it were the actual ocean. And I'm just going in and sort of shading around the mermaids' bodies now. And get a little more water there. Okay. So here's our finished page. I'll show a clip right at the end here with the photo. Thanks so much for watching. Hope you found this helpful or inspiring. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you.